Welcome back to the Composing Made Simple podcast. This is episode 25. On this episode of Composing Made Simple, we're going to talk about a new ownership change at Ensembles. Then we're going to go back into our user-submitted questions from our Discord channel that we didn't finish up a few episodes ago. And we're going to roll into our picks of the week or the show. So all this and more on the Composing Made Simple podcast. So let's get on into it.
Composing Made Simple. We talk about something new every show. Composing Made Simple. Grab a coffee, have a seat, and let's go.
Welcome back, guys. How you doing?
Doing great.
Good.
Awesome.
It's been busy,
Yes.
but it's great.
Life is crazy.
It
Still,
is.
after 7-8 months of COVID and lockdowns, and it's just, I think this is the new normal. Everybody at home working. Sorry if you hear a dog in the background. My house is insane this morning, so
That's great.
we're rolling on.
Busy.
So
Yes.
I hope everybody enjoyed our last episode with Alex. That was, for all of us, I think it was a great episode. Really insightful, just from hearing from his perspective and just having a conversation with a seasoned vet. It's always helpful. So we enjoyed it. So hopefully you guys out there enjoyed it as well. So on today's episode, we thought we'd kind of still tackle some of the questions that were sent to us. I think this was like 2 or 3 episodes ago, or maybe it was 2 episodes ago. We asked everybody in our Discord for questions, and so we thought we'd tackle a few today. But off the top, I don't know if a lot of people knew out there or if you received an email. I did. That kind of cool news. Mike Patty of Cinesamples actually took full ownership of the company. So I think he had a couple of partners. I know, Chris, you probably know a little bit more on the inside than I do. But he had a co-partner, I think?
Yeah, so he basically had one other partner, like full partner. I think Mike Berry was the other one. And so they were always known as like the two Mikes of Cinesamples. And who knows if it was a disagreement or maybe just a change in viewing of the company. But yeah, no, it's interesting just to see how Mike is now like this, the sole, I guess, leader and owner of the company. So it'll be interesting to see over the next few months and year to a year to see how the products roll out and if anything really substantial changes. But so far, I mean, everything's seems to be going smoothly and nice, and they have updates coming and everything. So
Yeah, that's the one thing about Cinesamples. I will applaud them. When they roll out updates, they're always free. I mean, they never charge for updates. And sometimes they drastically change things. They add new features. So props to Cinesamples. That's why I said I've always loved Cinesamples. I own pretty much all of their libraries. And so it's like I can't really buy anymore. But, I mean, there's a few that I don't own, but they're just not in my wheelhouse. But I have the Orchestral suite. And I dig it. I actually started using Cinestrings because they have that bite to them and layering them with other libraries. So it's been great. But
no, it's interesting. Like them and a few other companies are ones who will actively send out like surveys to people and just be like, what do you want to see? And I mean that's the way business should be. I think it's like listening to what your customers want, and because they determine your future, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know your audience and who you're developing sample libraries, you'll get lost and, basically won't be a company anymore. So I love that they do that.
Right.
Yeah, it's awesome. And Mike's always been kind of in with the community. I know he does, he does YouTube videos. I think he's on VI Control, as far as I know.
He definitely used to be, but I think over the past couple months to a year, he hasn't been as active there. I think many developers have just
fell off.
Seen it as a more toxic community, or the potential of it to be. So I haven't seen him there for a while, but
And Curtis, I think you finally picked up, because I know for a while you never had any of their libraries, but I think you've picked up everything, correct?
Yeah, well, at least all of their orchestral stuff and their piano and stuff.
Nice.
So I have most things. I don't have like their specialty libraries. I don't have the Tina Guo or the other stuff like that, but I have all their strings and brass and
nice
and winds. They're very nice. They're really nice. They really do. I feel like they have the same kind of like sonic philosophy, I guess, as like East West. They both kind of have that. I don't really know how to describe it. They just seem more authentic to me. Like they sound like real instruments a little more. I feel like with a lot of other libraries, you get this really like shaped and filtered clean sound that isn't what
Mm,
real instruments actually sound like if you've ever been around real instruments. So I
right.
really appreciate that they have that more sort of raw texture to them, which
Yeah.
is not something
Mm,
you get very often. Most companies, I feel like, take the more like, this has been kind of massaged into its most perfect form approach, which I don't dislike. I use it all the time. I just it just sometimes I really want that. I want it to sound like I'm just sitting in front of a real players.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's more
But
No,
you're
refreshing.
right. They do have kind of that bite and sheen that you
Yep.
kind of lose when you go in and you process everything to death.
Right.
Um,
Right.
That's right.
It's all in
It's got
that.
that.
It's all in the high end. I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. It's that
Yeah.
classic film score, like what we grew up with, like John
Yeah,
Williams.
it's like,
and
well, I mean, it's
Silvestri.
just like classic instruments. It's like what instruments actually sound like.
Yeah, right. No, I agree. That's
It's
why
just-
I've always used them. But I mean, Cinestrings, I always had a problem with them. But like I said, I'm eating my own words. I just don't know it very well. So it's one of those
Right.
things.
I
But
really like it. I think it's really, really, really great. I've been using them. Their legato, I still kind of struggle against every once in a while, but
It can be
Yeah.
bumpy.
but
Yeah.
but I mean that's. I don't hold that against them given the age of the library. I
Right,
mean,
right.
like every library from
Sure.
that era is a little bit bumpy, and there's certainly worse libraries from that era, so much worse. So
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
I give them props for that. So
yeah, how
it's
old is?
Yeah.
I think they're at least 7-8 years old.
yeah,
I mean,
they're
it's-
pretty old.
They've been out for a while.
So yeah, Cinderbreast was the first one. It came out almost. Well, it's about 9 years
yeah,
old.
that's what I
See,
thought.
and I think Cinebrass is their best one personally.
it's-
I
oh,
go
it's
back to
amazing.
Cinebrass
Yeah,
more
absolutely.
more than any of the other ones.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
they hit it out of the park with that one.
I did have a client notice some out of tune
Yeah.
horn. That's the only problem I've had with it. It was at one time a client was like, "That horn is
Ah.
not in tune." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Hey, at least they didn't say the sound
Right,
was
there you go.
bad, because then they'd be crazy.
yeah, no, the sound is great. The actual
Yeah.
sound is great.
But I
Right.
definitely find Cinestrings good for layering. Like if you have strings that aren't so
Yes.
bitey, and then
Yeah.
you layer those on there. Oh my god, because it gets
Mhm.
that bow in there.
And I-
you know?
Well, and
And
if
I
they're
love
so
using the
neutral,
strings
right?
for-
Like
Yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
take like a super wet or super dry like take
Right.
on
It's kind of
everything.
in the
So
middle.
it's just very nice
Yeah.
to have something that's just in the. It's just like their piano. We've talked about their piano before, where it's like super neutral, right? It's like
Right.
perfectly neutral vanilla piano, which is sometimes
Sure.
really really
Exactly.
useful.
All right.
Yeah, for most contexts that don't need much processing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you
Just
can
you
kind
go
of
for it.
morph it into your own sound because they give you the basis, like the standard, and then
Mhm.
you can layer, and then you could put your reverbs, and it won't dilute it as much. Like
Yeah.
Spitfire. Like sometimes it gets really hard to
Yeah.
do that because it's already,
Sure.
it's baked in. But I find like adding
Yeah.
Cinestrings to Spitfire strings. Oh, it just makes it so much better because it just gets that bite in
Mm.
there, that attack. It's got that.
Yeah.
Especially for staccato, like stuff. Like it's amazing
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that. But yeah, so we
Yeah.
thought we'd just mention that off the top. I didn't think we were gonna go into a samples discussion.
Well, no, it's funny, Curtis. You mentioned like the kind of like neutral vanilla sound, because like I've made a couple videos now on why I love Cine piano, and I think that's like from a classical point of view, it's like it has that. It just sounds like a real piano that's not processed, and it's just natural, and it has the classical setting and the Cine piano setting and the cinematic setting and the rock studio setting, so it gives you all the flavors. But the default setting is just what a normal piano sounds like in a scoring
Yeah.
stage.
Right.
So it's really nice.
And they do
yeah.
record in the Hollywood place, right? I mean, it's where they record
Mhm,
the
yeah.
soundtracks, film scores, so that's why that sound is
Right.
just so you're so used to it because you've heard it.
I'm assuming that's why their stuff
And
is
they have
still pretty
Dennis
expensive,
Aspects,
because I'm assuming they're paying royalties
they
of
do.
a substantial
They are.
amount
Yep.
to
They are,
do
yeah.
that in LA, and that's
They
there's
pay
not a lot of
royalties.
I don't think there are buyouts in LA, or if they are, they're
Right.
so high no one uses them. But yeah,
Yeah, they pay checks like
Mhm.
quarterly or whatever. I've seen Mike post about it before. So every time
Yes.
yeah,
like,
they have to. Yeah,
they sell libraries, there's a portion that goes to
Yeah,
the
I
players
think
that play on them.
I don't know what the union is. I think the LA union does not do buyouts at all, so there is no option to just like not pay the musicians royalties. So
Right, which is great. I mean, knowing that
Mm.
the musicians that played on that are still collecting royalties from it, so that's a great model.
Yeah.
I mean,
especially during this time.
Definitely. Yeah,
It's important.
this is rough, man, for live players. All right, well, should we get into our topics for the episode? All right, cool.
Let's do it.
So, like we said at the top of the show, we're still going through the questions that were submitted to us through our Discord about a couple months ago. So we picked out 2 that we think we would want to tackle today. So the first one is, what do you think holds back most young composers in their writing? Anybody wants to go ahead. I need to find out who sent this to us. I forgot.
Not writing.
Yeah.
Oh, Eric Gordon. He sent us a couple before.
Yeah, he sends great questions.
Yes.
Yeah, I just think it's not writing. I think people get so like worried about like what should I write that they don't write, and like just do it. Just sit down and do it, because although
easier said than done, Curtis.
It's not going to be perfect, and there may be things about it you don't like, and or you may just trash it. At least you've like sat down and practiced. Like, again, I keep coming back to this idea of like that practice is not just for like people who like perform, right? Like, as a composer, you have to practice composing. Like, literally, you must practice composing, and sometimes there will be a great output from that. Sometimes you'll have something that you're really proud of and you can use and is really useful, and sometimes you won't, and that's just the way it is, like, and the more you do it, the more likely you are to have that thing that you actually like and you're proud of and is useful, etc., etc. I just see so many people like, whether it's on VI Control or even in our Discord or whatever, like, and they're so worried about all these things that aren't writing, that they don't write. Like, if I just get this library, I'll be better. Or if I just, I don't know, if I just can figure out the perfect way to render this specific phrase, it'll be better. Well, that's not how. No, don't do that. Just sit down and write, and do as best you can, and you'll get better at it just by default. Like I said before, like, writing with samples, you have to write to the sample quite a bit. There's just going to be some things that are just not convincingly renderable, and you either have to leave the not convincing passage in there, or you have to write around it. Like, and that's a skill that you can only get better at by actually doing it and by learning each thing. We talk a lot about how out of a huge giant $2,000 worth of sample library, like, you maybe only use 5 to 10%. That's because that's what works for your style. So but think of how much you have to do to find that 5%, right? Like, you have to go through all 100% to find that 5% and to know that you found that 5%.
Exactly. Yeah, it's more like a muscle. It's like, exercise. Like, if you don't exercise, you're not going to get better at exercising. It's going to, like running. Let's just take running for an example. Like, you just can't go out and run a marathon. You got to work towards that and practice, and eventually one day you'll get there where it's easy. And let me just say it right here. It's not easy to write music. It's very difficult. It's one of the most difficult things to do, because you're pulling things out of the ether. Sometimes you just have a lucky day where the thing just writes itself. It's like something was channeling through you, and you have no idea. Like, you didn't even think. It's just like, it just worked. I just had a piece that, like, I wrote a couple weeks ago. It was like a pirate-inspired theme thing, and it just all worked for me. Like, I didn't have to think about it, and I still need to finish it, but still, like, I did it. And I learned from it because I did new things that I didn't normally do before. I learned a new progression. I learned this. So I think, like, to Curtis's point, like, just experimenting and just, even if it doesn't even turn into a finished piece, just do it and experience it and learn something from it. And I think what Curtis was saying, too, is I think the lack of experience for young composers, they just don't have the experience yet. Like, they haven't been under pressure. Like, I'm one of them. I would consider myself a young composer, but I'm not young. You know what I mean? Like, because I don't have that mileage like Curtis and Chris, you guys have. Like, you've done projects, you have things under your belt, you've worked under tight deadlines, all this stuff. So I would consider myself a young composer in a sense. So
interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm seasoned because I've been playing guitar and writing music for decades. But still, when it comes down to sitting down in a DAW and writing, that's a totally different experience for me, because I'm
Sure.
so used to writing collaboratively with a band or other people. Like, hey, I got this nice little riff, and then somebody hears it, and then they add to it, and then that sparks an idea for me. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of that
Hmm.
back and forth. When I'm sitting here with my DAW, it's just me and the keyboard and sample libraries. Like maybe a sound might,
Hmm.
I might hear a sound or something. It might spark an idea. But there's something about working with somebody else, collaborative, because it's just different, in a band setting. But that's my 2 cents. What do you think,
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, I think something that's not mentioned enough is the importance of passive and critical listening. I feel like a lot of people, grow up with certain influences, and I'm specifically talking to myself, but like, I have a certain style that I like to go to,
Yeah.
one or two or three, but it's so important to actually develop as a composer, and to develop your own sound is to listen to as much music as you can get your hands on, and not only passively listen to it but critically listen to it. And whether that means taking those pieces and specifically saying, oh, what are the melodic functions here, what are the harmonic functions, what are the orchestrational techniques being used, what stands out to me, or like what don't I like, taking notes and really trying to dissect what you hear, I think can really contribute to really quick growth in somebody, especially if they're really, excuse me, paying attention to every little thing that they're, every detail that they're hearing, and maybe they're analyzing why something sounds the way it
Hmm.
does. Um, but as like music listeners, I mean, we enjoy listening to music all the time, but it's just like important to broaden our horizons as much as possible, and just kind of listen to, I don't know, a new piece of music every couple of days or a week, at the least, just so we can start to introduce new ideas into our repertoire. So like when we become stuck on something, we can say, okay, like what would this person do, or what are those tendencies that maybe specific people turn to. And there's really nothing wrong with kind of pulling stylistic techniques from other
Yeah.
people, because I think it's kind of impossible to mimic someone 100% if you're really trying to write something original. So I think just the importance of listening to as much music as possible is pretty important, even if it's in a genre that maybe you're not particularly fond of, but it's still pretty important to collect that
Right.
data.
Absolutely. That's a really good note. I agree.
Yeah, something I've tried, and Curtis is kind of aware of it. I think what help a lot of people, maybe young composers, is pick specific genre types, like a pirate theme. Pick an old
Hmm.
western, spaghetti western. You try to go do one, and I'm telling you, man, you'll
Yeah.
learn so much because like you said, Chris, it kind of ties into what you were just saying. You have to go listen to that genre and get it into you. You know what I'm saying? You have to like learn it. You have to absorb it, and now you have to go
Hmm.
replicate it. Well, how am I going to get that? What are they doing? So now you have to destruct it, analyze it, learn the chord progressions, learn all the nuances, and then you have to try to replicate that. It sounds easy. It really does. It's like doing a cover tune, but you're doing it in your
Yeah.
own style and your own voice. And I did one, and Curtis has heard it. I think you heard it too, Chris. Was like the spaghetti western thing I did.
Hmm.
I took my own take on it, which I still need to
Hmm.
finalize it. And then, so my goal right now, and me and Curtis have talked about it, like maybe doing a little album, me and him together, which we'll see, because we're busy people. But he wanted that. I mean, Curtis is one that Sparky said, dude, that should be on an album that we should do together. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like to get that, that critic, but he had criticism to the piece, which is for me, like, was a tough thing as a young composer, as a young person, was hearing criticism, because I think it's not a personal attack. You know what I mean? Just take the criticism as, this is something that I can improve my piece, and it's a learning experience. You know what I'm saying? So that's where what I was talking about before, the learning and lack of experience for young composers. They just haven't had it yet, and because they think that it's an attack on them personally, and then that might
Hmm.
create writer's block. And like, one thing you mentioned, Curtis, is like, people, they'll sit here and worry about all these other things, but not just write the music. You sort of get into your own head, and then you basically lock yourself down. You know what I mean? Like you shut
Hmm.
yourself off from
Hmm.
creativity. Just be creative. Even if you think it sucks or doesn't sound good, just keep going. Turn that part of your brain off. You have to learn to turn that off. For me, it's very hard because I'm just that's just my internal critic. I'm very, you know what I mean? Like that's just something that I do very easily. Like I hear things, I hear people's pieces, and immediately things just start going in my brain because that's just the way my mind works. I'm trying to work on that for me because I'm like that. I'll be sitting here working on a piece, and I got to get it right the first time. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, just get the piece out. And that's what I did with that spaghetti western thing. There was things about it I hated, and I just told Curtis, I was like, what do you think? Does it work? And it did. And then, then go back to V2. Think of it as versions. It's okay. No composer gets it right the first time. If you do, okay, amazing. That you had a great day. You know what I'm saying? Lightning struck, which I said, it happens. But most of us, it's a slog, right? Because there's like times I write a whole section, and then I write another section, and I'm like, you know what? That doesn't really work there. So let's change that. And then I'm sure you guys do the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. You have to go back and tweak.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, always. And it's never... I mean, how many times would you guys say that you hit it out of the park the first time?
You know what's funny? The more I've written, the more, I guess, analytical I've been on my own music. Because like every time I write something new, I'm like, I have to make it different. I don't want it to sound like the same thing,
Right.
So it's like I get more critical of myself every single time. So I feel like if anything, the first couple pieces I wrote were the most quote unquote successful because like I didn't really have anything to worry about. I was like, okay, these are my first couple things on, I'm establishing a style here, and this is what I'm hearing in my mind. But then as I write more, it's like, well, I don't want to do the same tendencies over and over. What can I do that's new?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say it just depends on how much writing I've been doing. Like if I take 2 days off, and it's like day 3, and I'm like, okay, gotta do something. Like that's probably gonna cost me a couple hours of sitting there writing, erasing, because it's just I'm not in the zone, in the groove or whatever, and so it takes longer. But if I actually consistently sit down and do it, then there's a higher percentage of like, okay, that works, and move on to the next thing. But yeah, no, I do think I share Chris's kind of the more stuff I do, the more I don't want to repeat it, but there's more to repeat, and so it's like, I don't want to go back to that same well over and over and over again. But I mean, I'm actually pretty shameless about that, so I actually keep doing that in a lot of ways. Like there's like chords I voice the same way every time. I'm just like, it works. I'm not changing it. Like, I could sit here and try to figure out a better way or a different way to do this. Or I could do the thing that works. So I'm I think maybe a little more shameless in that way.
Right.
But
like you got a deadline, so whatever, it will work today.
Right. Well, and that's what I love about deadlines, right? Is that it melts a lot of that away, right? When someone's paying you and you have to get it to them today, there's a lot of like, well, it works, we're moving on, and then there's that gets rid of a lot of the like overly analytical, overly self-critical, like, but that's the way I did it last time stuff. Like, who cares? Just keep going. I was watching a interview with it was Eric Whitaker interviewing John Powell.
Oh wow!
And he was talking to him about John Powell was talking about how much, like, Eric Whitaker asked, like, how much do you write that you don't use? And of course his answer was nothing, because my contract says that everything I write is theirs. But no, he was talking about how he writes, like, he'll just sit down and doodle on the piano, I mean, for literally hours and hours and hours. And then what he does is he go back and listen to it, and then he just cuts out like little, like, minute-long segments that he thinks were good, but then he throws away, 99% of it, which, should be very encouraging to you as a composer, that even like John Powell has to throw away, huge amounts of work to find the golden brick or whatever.
Well, like having your iPhone, you have a recorder right on there. It just like I think I talked about this in a previous episode. My daughter's taking piano lessons. We have like a little keyboard, downstairs, and it's away from my computer. It sits out in front of our front window, and sometimes that's where my best ideas come from, because I'm not attached to anything. It's just me and the piano and my thoughts, and I just noodle on it. And sometimes ideas just come out of it. You know what I mean? And like, kind of to your point, Curtis, like. And then if you put a recorder on, I'm one of those people, though, I won't go back and listen to it. I can't listen to my own stuff. Like, I'm one of those people, like, I just go, oh, it sucks. Oh, it sucks. But it's that self-critic. Like, I have to work on that. That's a default of mine. And I don't compose enough like you guys. You guys are doing this every day. it's more of a hobby for me right now because I have a full-time job, I have children, it's a lot of it. Just to find 30 minutes to go compose is very tough for me sometimes.
Sure.
I have two young
Sure.
kids, and
Sure.
so it's just, and then, it's just crazy. So I do what I can, but I don't beat myself up on it. But yeah, I think that's a good thing to do is get away from the computer, compose in a new setting. That always helps. You know what I'm saying? Or pick up a new instrument. If you play guitar, bass, whatever, pick up something that you don't normally play and just start noodling on it. And like I said, the best way I learn how to do things is trying to copy find a piece that moves me. And I got one for you, Curtis, that I want us to do together. Okay? And this is...
Sure.
I will send it to you, but I'm just saying there's a piece that I want you to write. You'll love it. And it's because there's electric guitar in it, and I think it's cool. Anyway, but trying to, like I said, when I tried to do that spaghetti Western thing, I was like, I learned new things. I learned a chord progression. I learned nuances that I normally probably wouldn't write myself. And then I'm working on a pirate style piece, and I learned a new thing there. It's in minor, so you go to the one. Okay, so it's in D minor, right? So you go to D to C major, back to the 1, and then you go to G minor. Instead of going to A minor, you go to A major. That's the turnaround.
Right.
I never knew that before. You could do that. I learned that just by learning a pirate piece, which sounds stupid, but now that's in my memory bank. I know I can do that
it doesn't
trick.
sound stupid at all.
You know what I'm saying? That's a trick I can do now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And when I'm on the piano, sometimes I'm working out chord progressions. I'm working out ways to make chords work and trying new things, like going from would it be the minor? Let's see, 1, 2, 3. The minor. Do a minor 4 instead of a major 4, or and then you can go back to like the 1, or back down to a 2, and then anyway, I just like figured that all out, and then like figuring out doing 7th. Just practicing noodling. Noodling is the best thing, and since I'm a guitar player, that's what we do best. We noodle. That's what guitarists do. It's like, look, watch me noodle. It's like, okay, we'll do something. It's like, no, I just like to noodle and show off and do all this cool stuff. So I think it's a guitarist's hang up or something. It's just something guitar players do. But anyway, yeah. So I think for young people or anybody, just take a piece you heard and go, hey, I'm going to try to write in that style. And you'll be surprised how much stuff you'll learn. I think what we should do, seriously, for the Composing Made Simple podcast, me, you, and Curtis, because me and Curtis talked about this, but we'll add Chris too. Let's do an album of all cover style tunes. We'll all pick some, and then we can collaborate on a couple. I think that'd be amazing, dude. Like, we'll do Pirates, and we'll do, and I'm working another one I got next because I just got done playing Mafia, the definitive edition. They just released a newly updated for the original game Mafia. And the music is amazing, man. So I'm writing like a Mafia style piece. So that's my next thing on the docket. So these things, and this motivates me to write. You see what I'm saying? Because sometimes it's hard to get motivated. I understand if you're on a deadline, you have a project, you kind of have to throw that out the window. But for me, like as a hobbyist, and we have a lot of hobbyists out there. If you just don't feel it, like seriously, try to reinterpret a piece. You'll be surprised how it gets you going. Like, oh, cool, because you have something to work from. I think I work better when I hear something, because I'm always self-doubting myself. Is that gonna work? Does that work? And I don't know. I guess maybe that's just my experience. Like I'm not confident in my writing. That could be another thing too with young composers. They're just not confident.
Sure. But the confidence just comes with practice. So you can't cannot gain confidence unless you make yourself confident and just do it.
Well, and a lot of it goes back to that. Again, it's like I always bring this up, that Ira Glass thing where he talks about how there's like your ability to do something, whether it's composing or writing or whatever it is that you do, or painting, and then there's your taste. And your taste is almost always outrunning your ability, right? Like your taste is almost always better than your ability. So you usually can know that what you're writing does not meet your standards of your taste, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that there's this virtuous cycle between the two of them. And by working on your writing, you're actually working on your taste, right? And that's why listening is an important part, like Chris said earlier, because you can listen to something that meets where your taste is, right? I like this, and I know that I'm right, that this is good. I don't love my composition right as it is now, but I can improve it in these ways to make it maybe even more like that thing I was listening to, right? And then it kind of, there's that three-way sort of circle that kind of feeds on itself. But there's always going to be that, and I'll tell you this right now. I mean, like, I know, I'm sure Chris and Todd both feel this way, that like, there's never going to be a point in your life where you sit down and everything you write, you're like, this is wonderful. Like, it's just not a thing that happens.
No.
Like, because your
No.
taste is always ahead of it. It's always ahead of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like I said, maybe I should make it my pick of the week instead of something else. But that interview with John Powell, Eric Whitaker interviews John Powell. It's obvious that his taste outruns even his ability. Like, he talks about how
Right.
he doesn't even really like that forbidden friendship cue from the original How to Train Your Dragon, the one that everyone loves so much. And it's like, wow, I can't imagine what it must be like to have taste that's so developed that I don't even like that. Like,
Right.
that even that's not good
Sure.
enough. So stuff like that.
And plus, you got to understand with art and music, once it leaves your brain and you put it out into the ether, it's not yours anymore. It's not. And people will judge your piece. It's up to the people to decide if it's good or not. Like, it's out of your control.
Mhm.
You have you can't make people like your music. It's a very difficult thing. Music is weird. Like, it's one of the weirdest, art forms. Same with painting, I think, because, like you see some paintings. I'm not a big paint. I'm not really into that stuff, so I couldn't tell you. I mean, I like Salvador Dali. Like his stuff because I like weird, and but like I like it, but you guys might not like it. Like, that's not art. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's just
Right.
like, what's that guy that does the splatter stuff? I can't
Pollock.
think of it. Paul, there you go. Like, some people think that's beautiful and they see all this stuff in it because they're mine, but then other people are like, it's just splatter on a page. You know what I mean? So interpretation of one's creativity and art it's like I said, once you do the thing and it's out there, it's not yours. And it's up to the people to decide if it's good or not. So that's a big hang up, I think, for a lot of people, and especially for me too, because you want people to love your music, but not everybody's going to love it. And then a piece that you might hate, everybody loves. It's like the one piece that you write that you think, this is it, man. I nailed it. I finally got it. I got something that everybody's going to get moved to, and nobody feels that. They don't feel what you feel. It's very upsetting. And I think that affects a lot of young people too. Like, you got to grow thick skin. You just write the piece, get it over with, put it in the ether, and move to your next one. Always move forward, but always try to finish your pieces. But I mean, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes some pieces just can't be finished. You know what I mean? Or put it in the bank and come back to it. Like, I've done that. Like, I'll open up projects from 3 years ago that I did, and I'm like, I wrote this? Whoa. Or like, you don't remember writing it, and you're like, wow. But there might be parts in that you can use for a future piece, or a piece that you're stuck on. Like, you know what? I actually could take this piece, part of this one, and put it on this one, and it will work. So it's like a mystery, It's like, you just don't know where it's all going to come together. And one thing, I'm not going to get long-winded here, but one thing that I learned, like, later in life, I just thought, like, when bands go to write music, like, they just write the tunes and that's it. They write the album. But they have, like, like, they used to record on 4 tracks, whatever. They have, like, an encyclopedia of riffs and all this music that they just pull from. It's like, when I need an idea, I'll just grab this and there. So they're not always... I'm one of those people that's like, if I'm going to write an album, I have to write all brand new music. That's not how it works, people. You know what I'm saying? You're just making it harder for yourself. Right. So go back to all your ideas. And if you're not doing it right now, do it. Like, use your iPhone, sit down on a piano, your instrument of choice, and just record the idea. Store it away. One day you might come back to it and go, that will work for this piece that I'm writing. You'll be surprised how many times that you'll go back to your what do you want to call it? Database of musical ideas. And like Curtis said, like 99% of it you'll probably never even use, but it's there. So I think that's a good thing to get into if you're not doing it already. And I guess you could do it in your DAW too. You can sketch out ideas, or maybe take a whole session or one day, a couple hours, and just open up a session, open up a piano, and just sketch out themes. And then maybe that's your project session just for themes. And then you can just, you know what I mean? Like, since you can do an infinite amount of bars, it doesn't really matter. You could just put all your ideas in one project file. That'd be great too. I never thought about that until now. And then just open it up. Like, when you need an idea, go back to your project file and scan through them, and whatever one hits you, or talks to you or speaks to you that day, use it and then go write a piece. I mean, that's something you can do too.
There you go.
All right, cool. I think we answered that question pretty thoroughly.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so let's move on to the next one. This one was submitted by Kyleplayskeys. He asked maybe a bit about learning how to learn and how that applies to composing world and what it entails. Okay, so I think what he means is how should you learn to learn? Like how go about learning music? Probably like theory, stuff like that. And how that applies to the composing world. Well, oh man, I don't know about that section. I guess maybe Curtis or Chris, you could speak to that a little bit more.
I mean, I think what I said about the active and passive listening is just important. Just being like really specific and detailed in what you're trying to learn. And even if maybe you don't really know what specifically you want to improve on, maybe you can listen to kind of like similar genres of music that you're kind of writing and see what they're doing better. If it's professionally produced, if you're trying to, increase your mixing skills, then say like, oh, this piece is really well balanced, or what are the violas doing here? What are the, brass doing there? So it's just being very active in what you're hearing and just taking those notes and incorporating them into your own workflow one step at a time, I think is pretty crucial.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just in music, at least, it's the ability to pull something apart and understand how it works. Because depending on, you're always going to hear that thing like throughout your entire life that you're like, man, that's so good, and I have no idea why. And like the ability to go in and like answer that question as to why does that sound good? Why do I like that? What about that do I like? Is really valuable, because by taking something apart, you're truly understanding it. It's sort of like the old aphorism that if you want to learn, teach, right? Like you should be able to explain to somebody else why that is so good, right? And then you truly understand it, right? Like it wasn't until I taught music for a while that I actually understood a lot of it, because I had this like intuitive understanding of a lot of it, but I hadn't let that sort of calcify and like become something that I could then pick up and hand to somebody else. And it was when I learned how to do that I made like a lot more strides in it. So I think that like I said, learning how to learn is actually approach it like a teacher. Like, what if you had to explain this to somebody else? Right. How would you do it? And that forces you to go through this mental process that really actually teaches you a lot about
internalize it. Internalize it.
Yeah, about things. So
that's why I started a YouTube channel. I swear to God, that's what I did. I was like, if I want to learn this and get into it, let's start this, and then that will force me to learn this stuff and internalize it. So that's why I did. And most of it was like DAW stuff, because I wanted to learn the DAW, and like when I learned something, I'm like, hey, I should share this information with somebody so I can get a better understanding on what I'm trying to say. And this podcast, like I learn every episode, man. Just like talking, and I have epiphanies and realizations. Like when I'm trying to explain to you guys, or like when people ask us questions, like you really have to think about it, and try to give a great answer. So it's been helpful just sitting here talking with you guys, and then hearing your guys' perspective, and then especially like when we had Alex on, like got a whole nother different perspective, So it's really, and that's another thing, I would say how to learn. I mean, YouTube is great. Rick Beato, just subscribe to his channel and just soak it all up. Like he's got a wealth of knowledge to learn anything you want to learn about music. I would go to him, because he's legit.
I think YouTube is so interesting in that, like, there's some things where it's like people giving away basically postgraduate musical knowledge just for free. Yeah. Like you basically can get probably something akin to a PhD in music, right? Like if you were to watch enough YouTube. There's also, you have to be careful with YouTube though, because you have to make sure that you're actually paying attention to somebody who knows what they're talking about. That's the hard part for me about YouTube. Yeah. So like I watch like Chris's videos, and I watch Rick Beato's videos, and I love film score analysis. Does amazing videos. There's tons of these things, and because of that, I get recommended a lot of these like YouTube things, and occasionally I'll watch them and I'll be like, this person does not know what they are speaking about and is wrong here, and they're leading people down a really bad path. And so just that's my only thing about YouTube, is it's both amazing, and also you just gotta just make sure the person, I don't know how to like tell that to people. I don't know, maybe it's like education, maybe it's like actual experience doing this for a living,
Yeah,
sort
that's
of
what
thing,
it is.
could be helpful. I mean, those are the things to kind of generally look for. I see a lot of people on there, and they're like, "This is, the 3 levels of, orchestration," and I'm like, "Yeah, but your last one that you say is really good is not good
Right.
at all."
Well, if you want orchestration, is
Right,
it
right, right.
Orchestration Online?
Yes,
Yeah,
also
Yeah.
Orchestration Online is great.
it's great. Well,
Yeah,
come
I
to
mean,
us.
there's
We'll tell you the good ones.
yeah,
Like,
go ask in the Discord because
Yeah.
I can try to like give the ones that I found are really good. But I always worry about just being like YouTube because I see so
Right,
many
right.
of these channels pop up where it's like some guy, and they're well intentioned, and it's not like the person is stupid. It's just that they're peddling something that is above what they can actually deliver, and that
Right.
does happen. So
Right,
just be
right.
careful of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rick Beato, Orchestration Online, JJ, I can't pronounce his last name. Yeah, he's
Berthiaume,
good
yeah.
too.
Uh-huh.
He knows
Chris.
what he's talking about. Christopher CU, Curtis Schweitzer. Don't go to Todd K.
Yeah.
Edwards. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Go to Todd. Especially Todd.
No, when it comes to theory and stuff like that, yeah, I'll be the first one to tell you. I know basic. I know I know how to construct a major,
Right,
minor
right.
scale. I know my chord progressions. The basics. I know that. But when we're getting into like major theory stuff, yeah, I'm out. But you don't need to know all that. I mean, most people, if
Right.
you know the major scale, you can have a career. Oh, and Mike Verda, check out his master classes. He's legit
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Oh, and Alan Marinan.
Yes.
Yes, check him out too.
Maynard.
Maynard. Yep. He's legit too. And just be careful with all these courses and stuff. Like I said, just go to Rick Beato's channel. You'll learn everything you need to learn about music. Okay, he does it. He was a professor, so like he knows how to speak
Yeah,
to people.
sure.
He knows how to teach people. I've learned so much. I mean, some of his
Yeah.
stuff is just way over. And also, I want to admit,
Yeah.
you can just sit and binge and watch, but you have to put it into practice. Okay, you have to do the things,
Yeah.
or you're not going to learn it. Because I do that sometimes. I'll like watch a lot of investing videos or just like a topic I'm really into, and I'll just kind of, it's like an entertainment. I just watch it because I'm entertained. But if you don't put it into practice, and I was doing that too, Curtis. I was watching a lot of YouTube stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I'm done. Let's just go do it. You can fill yourself with too much knowledge, and then that will hold you back because now you're thinking too much. Like kind of what you said, Curtis and Chris. It's like you're just sitting there. You're not writing. You're just going, You're thinking about it. Like, if I did that, this, ooh, that would be great. Da-da-da-da. Okay, you could have spent that time and wrote 4 bars. Oh, and Mike Worth, a.k.a. Farkle. Check out his YouTube channel as well. He knows what he's talking about, too. He's a seasoned vet. He does Farkle Fridays. He does them once in a while, but he drops knowledge like crazy. But it's Mike Worth. I have an interview on my YouTube channel. I think a lot of people didn't like it because Mike's like really amped and high energy, and we just we were just kind of talking stuff. But yeah, he's another legit guy when it comes to music.
Yeah.
I think
Awesome.
also when it comes to composing, learn how to write melodies. That's a hard one, man, because a lot, and I'm fall victim to this. Like your melody will just kind of wander. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't really get to the point. Like, and stick with your idea. I was watching Think Space Education. That's another one. Follow him too. He was doing a video, and I was watching it. Really good video about like the things he's seen in his students about what people keep what makes music crap. I mean, like how to improve it. And he was destructing these things and like showing how to do it. And he was touching on melody writing, like, and sticking on your idea. When you come up with an idea, move the idea. And if you can't, you can't expand the idea, then it's not a good idea, right? I mean, like learn how to take your melody, which I have a lot of trouble with, and then milk it, right? Like expand on it, themes and stuff like that. So that's another good thing to learn, I think. It's very vital in composing, especially like in the realm that we do. Because think about it, if you have an hour, 2.5 hour movie, or you're doing a video game, think about all those cues you have to write, but they still have to tie back into the main theme. They have to make sense. Yeah. And that's very tricky, right? I mean, I think Curtis could probably speak to that highly because, that's his realm. Oh,
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Mhm.
Melody writing is hard. It's one of those things I've never had to teach anyone, so my understanding of it is so intuitive and so
Right, right, right,
unformed
right.
that, you say all the, you can talk about all these things like the notion of antecedent consequent phrases, the question
Right.
answer, all that stuff, but that doesn't really, I feel like, get to the meat of a melody. What I should do is probably try to like what if I were to try to teach someone to write a
Yeah.
good melody? How would I do it? And I would have to sit down. That's going to take like a day of just sitting in a chair thinking.
Yeah. Well, I can kind of share my thoughts on that because like I have a couple of students who are working on melody writing and all that, and I've studied a couple of resources, but I feel like in order for a melody to be memorable and thematic, it has to have pattern and grouping and
Yep.
repetition, a good combination of all
Mhm.
three. So if a melody just wanders on, you're lacking the grouping, you're also lacking the repetition. Repetition
Key.
is, I guess, maybe the number one thing
Yeah.
that makes a melody memorable because it's just it has to have some sort of reoccurring idea that makes it stick in the listener's mind. And in order for a melody to be memorable and singable, there has to be some form of grouping. So for the singer to be able to take a breath and then singing the next part, right? And then what was the last one?
Rhythm.
Um,
Melody,
rhythm,
repetition,
sure, yeah, yeah, yeah.
or
Patterning
repetition,
as well is what
grouping.
I
I
said.
don't
Yeah,
remember what the last one
I
was.
don't remember
is
that
part of
spaced
the
out. Sorry.
patterning is part of the rhythm. Rhythm is part of patterning
Okay.
actually. So
Well, no
yeah,
big
I would say
jumps
that.
too. Like think of a singer. Like you can't go from C,
Right,
to
right,
like
right, right, right.
G, G
Yeah,
in the next octave. Like you just can't do
Appalachian Spring
right,
would like a word.
that. Well, there's always exceptions to the
right,
rules, but you know
right.
what I mean.
Yes, but if you want to do big leaps, then at least
Put a note in there.
mix in
Yep.
steps and
Yeah,
skips in there
yeah.
as well. Like it has to be, yeah, like you don't want to just do a melody with all leaps and big jumps and all that, because then it's not as singable and
I'm
not
sure you guys
It's like a
follow
little. It's like a
go ahead.
little conversation
Yep.
that something is having with
right.
itself.
Like a sentence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Periods, commas,
Yeah.
exclamation points.
We should
It's kinda
probably
like
do like
writing
a
a
whole
sentence.
episode on melody, but I would need like 10 weeks to like sit down in a chair and stare at the wall.
Well, there
to,
you go,
like,
Curtis. There's a new challenge for
think
you. Do a
about what I
YouTube
was
series.
thinking
Here we
about,
go.
like,
Do a YouTube
like,
series
what
on
do I
melody
do?
writing.
Yeah, that would probably be really good for me
Yeah,
because
yeah,
then I
yeah.
wouldn't be just. See, this is a good example of somewhere where I'm not very disciplined, right? Like, hold on just a minute. I got like screwed.
Kids going crazy. Yes, people, we have children that listens to the podcast. So it's real life.
Yeah.
We apologize, but
Yeah.
well, this is our lives.
No, if the child does not like the topic,
Yeah,
they'll
they'll
let
let
us
us
know.
know. But yeah, I mean that's not specific to Kyle's question, but I think melodies are tough. Like I know me personally, like when you write a melody, like, oh, that's just too simple.
Right.
Go with it. Go with
Right.
it.
Yeah,
Because those
well,
are the
I
ones
mean-
that stick with people.
I mean,
Well,
listen
it's
to,
too
everything
boring.
Beethoven ever wrote. Like, he never writes these, like, languid, long, super detailed melodic ideas. It's always these little cells.
Right. Like
Sure.
chunks, like little
Yeah.
chunks but they all combine
Yeah.
together and make sense. Yeah, definitely. Dun 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 dun.
Mhm. Yeah.
Dun 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 dun.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So if anyone is interested, well, ThinkSpace has a great video on melodies. I also have a video on melody writing. If you're at all interested, just type in my name and melody, and you should find it. But it just like these little ideas of just making it simple and make sure to repeat it now and then,
Yep.
and give it some patterning with some rhythmic variation, not too much.
You could
but
do
just enough that it's
sorry,
singable.
Chris, I'm sorry. You could do 4
No,
bar,
no,
you could
I
do an 8-bar
understand.
melody, you could do a 16-bar
Yeah.
melody. Think of it in
Yeah.
like that in chunks. That's how I kind of try to do it. But yeah, melody is it takes a lifetime to master. I mean, it's very difficult to write a memorable melody. I mean, it really is, without copying somebody else, without lifting
Well,
somebody
it's hard
else's
because I
melody.
feel like, and the more I spend on time on texture, that I try to, like, develop texture, because that's important too, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
really important that you understand that. I actually find that I can work on one or the other sometimes. Like, I can't do both at the same time sometimes, and so it's like a question of balancing, so that I don't spend so much time on just like this main sort of sentence, but then I
Right.
also make sure that sentence is set in a way, orchestrated nicely and produced nicely and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
but I just have a finite amount to spend on both of those, and if I go too all in on one, then the other one suffers a lot. So
Exactly.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
to Kyle's question, I guess we did talk how that applies to the composing world. I'm guessing like how that applies to composing, like you're actually composing. I would say,
Yeah.
and here's the thing about melody writing: if you write your melody first, then your chords will come from there. And I know I'm one of those people that writes the chords first, which is probably what hinders a lot of my writing.
Mm.
I'll pick up chord progression, then I try to fit a melody in it, which is probably the
No.
dumbest thing to do.
no.
No,
No,
not
okay.
necessarily.
I mean,
No,
it's
that
giving you
works.
something to start with at least. That, like
Right.
you've done
Yeah.
that thing where you've limited your choice, right? Like
Right.
you've gone from my melody can be any notes to now it needs to fit into this. So that's probably actually not a terrible way to start.
That's how I do it. And then another good thing for melody writing, chord tones. Outline the chord tones. That's
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
does it, and
Yeah.
that's the most effective way. Use the melody from the chord tones, and this stuff is easier said than done. Like it's easy to talk about it, but when you're sitting in front of that blank page and you're sitting in front of your keyboard, it's a
Right.
different world. It's a different animal. So I get it, man. I'm right there with everybody. Like you just want to.
Well, that's why it's important to critically
yeah,
listen,
right.
though, right? So when you hear a piece and you hear a melody you like, try to figure it out on the piano. Try to figure out what the chords are. Then you can say, "Oh, that E in the melody lines up with the C major chord on the bottom because there's an E in the C major
Exactly.
chord, right?" So you just figure out those little things. You're like, "Okay, so then if I follow this, maybe this melody is going up by step here, going down by skip there. There's a little bit of variety. That it's a nice contour in the melody. All that. You just start to figure these things out.
Exactly.
So.
Good point. So basically, to summarize the whole episode is practice, practice,
Yeah.
practice, listen, and write music.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
And you're on your way.
All right. Well, I think Chris said he had to go. So
Yes.
should we have him do his pick real
I'll-
fast, and then he can
Yeah.
go?
I'll do a
Cool.
pick
Yeah,
really
we'll wrap
quickly.
up the show. So we'll head on
Um,
into our picks of the week.
I don't know if I mentioned this before, but Orchestral Tools released their Phoenix Orchestra a couple weeks ago, and that's kind of like a strictly Chinese-based library, which is really cool. So like, a lot of people are wondering, oh, how does it compare to like Stretzov Jade Ethnic Orchestra? So it's like it's a very different sonic signature. I mean, the instrument combinations are kind of similar, but but Jade also has a focus on the Mongolian side, while Phoenix is more strictly Chinese. But in terms of the tone and all that, it has a very clean and crisp, detailed sound, and legato is quite good, and it has like different vibrato styles for the woodwinds. So I would say it's more flexible at the moment, while Jade has more instrument selection and the sound is a little bit more characterful, and there's more of a room tone to it, which is also really nice. I think a large part of my piece Internal Resolve, which I used Jade in, it was pretty like the sonic signature of it was really determined by how Jade was recorded. And I really liked the authentic type of rustic tone in those instruments. And I think Curtis, you have it too.
I do.
that true?
I haven't used
Right.
it in
I don't know if
anything.
you had it. Okay. But yeah, just the way those two libraries I think can interact, it can be pretty interesting. Like using the surround mics and the tree mic from Phoenix, and maybe the close mics and some of the room from Jade. I think you get a pretty cool combination, and if you're going for that style of music.
Very cool.
So that's kind of my
Cool.
pick.
All right, I'll go
Yeah.
next. I don't really have any new libraries I got, but I'm just going to mention it because I love it so much. The Unfinished, anything by him is amazing. I did pick up Amara. I think it's Amara. I didn't have that one, and I was like, well, I don't have this one. I gotta get it. So I picked it up, and it's actually really good. I've used it on a couple tracks. I like the style of it. So I guess I'll just say that because you just can't you just can't go wrong without the Unfinished. If you have Atmosphere, obviously, if you have, and he actually has packs for other stuff too. So not just Atmosphere, but he does really good work.
Right.
All right, Curtis.
My pick of the week is the Acoustic Grand Ensembles from 8DO. These are Really interesting take on basically tonal percussion. So they'll have like say a glockenspiel instrument, but it's usually, I believe, a grouping of them, which gives it this really ethereal, interesting texture. They also have some harps. They have some, of course, marimbas, vibraphones, xylophones, all those things. I've been using their cimbalum from that just like all the time in every piece ever since I got it.
Yes.
Like it's just like, oh, I should use that here, and it works. I mean, cimbalum you should just use in everything anyway, but this particular one has got a really interesting sonic signature because it's more than one, I believe. I believe that's the whole deal of the library is that it's more than one, so you kind of get this a little bit of looseness in the sound. But yeah, no, I just like it's one of those things I picked up because I kept meaning to, and then it just kind of has been worming its way into everything I've worked on since then. So
Nice.
so yeah.
Awesome.
Curtis is
Love it.
that should be your middle name, Chimblin, because it's
Yeah.
he like I know that you love.
I
That
do love
instrument.
it. I do.
What
I
was
will
the one
put
that
it in
you used to
anything.
use?
I used to use the one from I believe it's an East, the whatever one East West is. I think it's
Okay.
Hollywood Percussion, maybe. I can't remember.
Okay.
It's one of their newer ones because it's more deep sampled than like it's not from Raw or Silk, I don't think. So it's
I
one
have a
of the
Spitfire
newer
one.
East ones. Yeah, the Spitfire. I have the Spitfire one too, but I just haven't had a chance to use it yet. But yeah, this one's really interesting. It's so with samples, right? Like you can have like that exquisite sample, right? That sample that is just perfectly programmed. It's it sounds exactly like the real instrument, responds kind of more like the real
Right.
instrument. Or sometimes you just want something that works, right? Even though it's maybe not super realistic. Like I don't think it's super realistic to have 8 Celestes playing together, right? But it sounds really good, so it's a good place for samples. So I like
Right.
libraries like this where it was something you would never hear in real life, but as a sample library it works really well because then you're not really worried about how realistic in
Yeah.
air quotes it is, right? Because it doesn't matter.
Texture.
It just sounds
It's a
good.
texture. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a texture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I picked up. I can't think of it. Not Orange Tree, but the hurdy-gurdy from. I can't remember who it was from. It's like a third party. I apologize, but it's just so freaking loud, man. I tried to put it in that pirate piece. It just didn't work. It sounded great. but
Hurdy-gurdy
then,
is
like,
interesting. I could if there was a hurdy. I was going through that Omni Music Publishing How to Train a Dragon score, and there's like a couple of cues with I think 2 that have hurdy-gurdy. I was like, oh, interesting.
Nice.
And
So-
it definitely sticks out, even though it's like a real recording, right? Like they get a professional musician in like Abbey Road to play this hurdy-gurdy, and you're like, that doesn't sound great. But it works.
I need to get that score from. I know it's like on
it's so
Backorder
good.
now.
I think they're getting more in. So
The first cue in the whole movie is my favorite. It just.
it's
Gotta love
and the
it.
score.
I mean,
It's
the
a
whole
very
score's
well
great,
done
but yeah,
score. It's a
that's my
very well
favorite.
done. I mean, like it's a presentation of as a written book. It's really clear and
Nice.
but yeah. it's
Well, did
very
you
good.
see John Powell's? I know Chris, you have to go, but John Powell's letter, dude, that he wrote on Facebook about it. He's like, "Don't put it in PDF and copy it." I was like, "Damn!" I was like, "Cause it'll basically they'll never do it again." Because he doesn't own the score. Like
No.
you know,
Paramount or whoever.
Yeah,
owns
they
the
own
score,
it.
Yeah.
And that's the lot of thing that people don't understand. Like John Williams probably doesn't. He might. I mean, I don't know. But it's usually the movie company or whoever produced the movies or the soundtrack owns the scores. And so yeah. Anyway, the wonderful world we live in. But so anyway, hope everybody enjoyed the episode. As always, you can find us at composingmadesimple.com. It has all of our links there to our Discord. If you want to become a Patreon, which I still need to get our pledge things together, but we will have it up. I have to work with the guys and get what we want to offer and stuff, just what we can do right now. But I might just get it like $1 if you just want to donate just to support us, which would be amazing. We would appreciate it. Other than that, I think that's going to conclude this episode. If you want to write, if you have questions or anything, you can write to the show. It's podcast@composingmadesimple.com if you want to email us. Other than that, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye, everybody.